A puppy was about to be put down, but a sick boy's dying wish changed everything. A worn-down mom thinks she's losing her child until he sees one doomed puppy on the news and begs her to save him. But when she tries, she slams into a cold system that wants the dog gone forever. And then, something unbelievable happens. The boy disappears, the puppy vanishes with him, and the truth behind why that dog was really marked dangerous is darker than anyone knows. Suddenly, the whole town is searching. Tensions are rising, and one mistake could cost them both their lives. What secret were they really running from? And how far will a dying child go to save the only creature who understands him? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The fluorescent lights of Joe's Corner Diner buzzed overhead as Mila Hale mechanically wiped down another sticky table. Her fingers were raw from the harsh cleaning solution, and her feet ached in their worn, non-slip shoes. The morning rush had ended, leaving behind a mess of half-empty coffee cups and syrup-streaked plates. "Order up," Tommy, the cook, called from the kitchen window. The bell's sharp ding made Mila jump. She grabbed the plates of scrambled eggs and toast, carefully balancing them on her forearm, as she had done thousands of times before. The familiar weight was almost comforting. Almost. "Here you go, folks," she said with a practiced smile to the elderly couple in booth 6. Her voice was cheerful, but her eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall. 2 more hours until her shift ended. 2 more hours until she could get to the hospital. The morning dragged on in a blur of coffee refills and breakfast orders. When her replacement finally arrived, Mila practically ran to the break room, yanking her purse from her locker and checking her phone. No messages from the hospital. She wasn't sure if that was good or bad anymore. The bus ride to St. Mary's Medical Center felt endless. Mila pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city blur past. The same route she'd taken nearly every day for the past 3 months. Some days, she felt like she lived more in the hospital than in their small apartment. When she reached Michael's room, she found him propped up in bed, pale but awake. The TV mounted on the wall was playing cartoons with the volume turned low. Various machines blinked and hummed around him, their wires and tubes a tangled web that seemed to trap her little boy in place. "Hey, sweetie," she said softly, dropping her purse and moving to kiss his forehead. His skin felt cool and slightly clammy. "Hi, Mom." Michael's voice was weak, but his smile was genuine. "Dr. Matthews came by earlier. He wants to talk to you." Mila's stomach clenched. She tried to keep her expression neutral, but Michael had always been too perceptive for his own good. At 11 years old, he sometimes seemed older than she felt. "That's okay," she said, smoothing his blanket. "I'll catch up with him later. How are you feeling today?" Before Michael could answer, there was a gentle knock at the door. Dr. Matthews stood there, his face carefully composed in what Mila had come to think of as his serious news expression. "Ms. Hale, do you have a moment?" Mila squeezed Michael's hand. "I'll be right back, honey." In the hallway, Dr. Matthews led her to a small consultation room, the same room where they'd first discussed Michael's diagnosis, where they'd reviewed treatment options, where they'd gone over test results that kept getting worse instead of better. "Miss Hale," he began gently, "I think it's time we discuss quality of life decisions." The words hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of her chair, knuckles white. What exactly does that mean? Michael's latest tests showed the treatment isn't having the effect we hoped for. His body is getting tired. We need to consider whether continuing aggressive treatment is in his best interest. Mila felt the room spin slightly. "You're telling me to give up?" We're telling you to think about what's best for Michael, about making whatever time he has left as comfortable as possible. Tears burned in her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She couldn't break down. Not here. Not now. The rest of the conversation passed in a haze. Words like palliative care and comfort measures floated around her, but she couldn't quite grasp them. When she finally returned to Michael's room, she found a woman in a bright yellow volunteer vest chatting with him. "Oh, Ms. Hale!" The woman turned, smiling broadly. "I'm Sarah from the Dreammakers Foundation. We work with the hospital to help fulfill wishes for our special patients." Mila's heart sank further. A wish foundation. They only came when… She couldn't finish the thought. "I was just asking Michael what his dream wish might be," Sarah continued brightly. "Sometimes kids want to meet their favorite superhero, or go to Disney World, or… Look, Mom," Michael interrupted, pointing at the TV. The cartoons had been replaced by a local news segment. The screen showed a tan and white dog in a shelter kennel, looking scared and confused. The news anchor's voice was somber. Local animal shelter authorities have scheduled euthanasia for this dog, known as Rocket, after an incident involving alleged aggressive behavior, despite some community protests claiming the dog was actually protecting a woman during a domestic dispute. The decision has been made to proceed with euthanasia this Friday. "That's my wish," Michael said quietly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "I want to save him." The room fell silent. Sarah blinked in surprise, her clipboard frozen mid-note. Mila stared at her son, then at the image of the condemned dog on the screen. "Honey," she started, "are you sure? You could wish for anything. A trip? A special gift? Maybe." "He doesn't deserve to die," Michael interrupted, his voice stronger than it had been all day. "They're wrong about him. He was trying to help someone, and now they're going to kill him for it." His blue-tinged lips trembled slightly. "I want him to live. That's my wish." Mila looked at her son, really looked at him. For weeks, she'd watched him growing weaker, more withdrawn. But now there was a spark in his eyes she hadn't seen in months, a purpose. Sarah cleared her throat. "Well, this is certainly an unusual request, but not impossible. We could work with the shelter, perhaps arrange for the dog to be adopted by a suitable family." "By us," Michael said firmly. He turned to Mila, his eyes pleading. "Please, Mom, we could save him." Mila felt tears threatening again, but for a different reason now. Her son, facing his own mortality, wasn't asking for toys or trips or special treats. He was asking to save another life, to make a difference. She thought about Dr. Matthews' words about quality of life, about making whatever time was left count. Looking at Michael's face, seeing that spark of hope, she realized maybe this was exactly what he needed, what they both needed. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay, we'll try." Michael's face lit up with the brightest smile she'd seen in months. "Really? Really?" She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll save him together." Sarah was already making notes on her clipboard, talking about contacting the shelter and arranging paperwork. But Mila barely heard her. She was watching Michael, who had turned back to the TV screen where Rocket's image was still frozen. Her son's eyes were bright with purpose, his thin shoulders straighter than they'd been in weeks. Whatever happened next, she knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most powerful wishes weren't about receiving at all. They were about giving, about saving, about hope. The harsh fluorescent lights of Michael's hospital room cast shadows under Mila's eyes as she paced back and forth. "Honey, I just don't know if this is the best idea. There are so many other wishes you could choose." "But this matters, Mom." Michael's voice was soft but determined. His thin fingers plucked at the hospital blanket. "They're going to kill him on Friday just because nobody understands him." Mila paused her pacing, studying her son's face. There was something in his expression she hadn't seen before, a fierce kind of empathy that made her chest ache. "The news said he was dangerous," she tried one last time. "No." Michael shook his head emphatically. "They said he was protecting someone. He was trying to help, and now everyone's afraid of him." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Sometimes people look at me like that too. Like they're scared because I'm sick. Like they don't know what to do with me." The truth of his words hit Mila like a physical blow. She sank into the chair beside his bed, reaching for his hand. "Oh, sweetheart. Please, Mom, we have to try." Looking into his pleading eyes, Mila knew she'd lost this battle, and maybe that was okay. She squeezed his hand. "I'll go to the shelter today." The city animal shelter was a sprawling concrete building that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Mila approached the front desk, where a bored-looking clerk barely glanced up from her computer. "I need to speak with someone about Rocket, the dog that was on the news." "One moment." The clerk pressed a button on her phone. "Ms. Kincaid? Someone here about the aggressive case." A few minutes later, Darlene Kincaid emerged from a back office. She was a stout woman in her late 50s, wearing a crisp blazer and an expression that suggested she'd already made up her mind about whatever Mila might say. "I'm Mila Hale. My son Michael. He's terminally ill, and his wish is to save Rocket. We want to adopt him." Kincaid's face remained impassive. "I'm sorry to hear about your son, Miss Hale, but that dog has been designated as dangerous. We have very clear protocols about such cases." "But the news report said he was protecting someone." "The incident report clearly states aggressive behavior," Kincaid cut her off. "We can't risk placing a dangerous animal, especially with a family that includes a vulnerable child. It would be a liability nightmare." "Could I at least see him?" "That won't be necessary." Kincaid's voice was cold. "The decision has been made. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other matters to attend to." Mila watched helplessly as Kincaid turned away, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. The sound echoed in Mila's head like a countdown. Tick, 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 marking the moments until Friday when an innocent life would be snuffed out because of bureaucracy and fear. She was almost to the exit when a man in scrubs touched her arm. "Wait," he said quietly. His ID badge identified him as Dr. Eli Navarro, staff veterinarian. His dark eyes were kind but cautious. "Come with me." He led her through a side door and down a corridor lined with kennels. The cacophony of barking was deafening, but one kennel was eerily quiet. Inside, a medium-sized tan and white dog lay curled in the corner, watching them with wary eyes. "This is Rocket," Eli said softly. "I've been treating him since he came in. He's not aggressive, he's scared. The incident they're using to condemn him? He jumped between an abusive boyfriend and his girlfriend, got kicked in the process. The girlfriend tried to tell them what really happened, but..." He shrugged helplessly. Mila moved closer to the kennel. Rocket lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers with an intelligence that took her breath away. Could my son meet him?" Eli glanced over his shoulder. "Officially? No. But I have a break in 20 minutes. If someone happened to bring a child to the back door, then..." 2 hours later, Mila wheeled Michael's chair through that same back door. The boy's face was flushed with excitement despite his obvious fatigue. Eli met them with a finger to his lips, leading them to Rocket's kennel. The change in the dog was immediate. He rose from his corner, tail giving a tentative wag as Michael's wheelchair approached. There was no fear, no aggression, just a gentle curiosity. "Hi, Rocket," Michael whispered. "I'm Michael." Eli carefully opened the kennel door, keeping a close watch as Rocket stepped out. The dog moved slowly, favoring one leg slightly, a reminder of the kick that had earned him his death sentence. But his approach to Michael was nothing but gentle. Rocket sniffed Michael's extended hand, then pressed his head against it. Michael's smile was radiant as he stroked the dog's soft ears. "See, Mom? He's not dangerous. He's just lonely and scared. Like me sometimes." Mila watched as her son and the condemned dog leaned into each other, two souls connecting across the barriers of species and circumstance. Rocket's tail began to wag more confidently, and Michael's laugh, a sound she hadn't heard in weeks, echoed off the concrete walls. "We have to save him," Michael said again. But this time Mila didn't argue. She looked at Eli, who was watching the scene with a mixture of hope and worry. "There has to be a way," she said quietly. "Look at them." Eli nodded slowly. "There might be, but we'll have to fight Kincaid's system. Are you ready for that?" Mila watched as Rocket gently licked Michael's pale cheek, making her son giggle again. In that moment, she knew she would fight anyone or anything that tried to separate them. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I am." The sound of a door opening somewhere down the hall made them all jump. Eli quickly but gently guided Rocket back into his kennel, then hurried them toward the exit. But the image stayed with Mila, her son's face alive with purpose, Rocket's eyes filled with trust. Whatever it took, she would find a way to save them both. The tender moment between Michael and Rocket was suddenly interrupted when Michael's breathing became labored. His thin fingers, which had been gently stroking Rocket's fur, began to tremble. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. His face had turned an alarming shade of gray, and the blue tinge around his lips, the one that always made Mila's heart stop, was becoming more pronounced. "Michael!" Mila rushed forward as her son slumped in his wheelchair. Rocket whined anxiously, pressing closer to Michael as if trying to hold him up. Eli sprang into action, his veterinary training translating seamlessly to human care. "Let's get him lying down," he said calmly, helping Mila lift Michael from the wheelchair to a padded bench in the break room. "Does he have medication?" Mila's hands shook as she pulled the emergency kit from her bag, the one she carried everywhere, the one that marked them as different from other families. "Here," she said, fumbling with the oxygen mask. Eli helped her secure it over, Michael's face while she administered his rescue medications. The minutes crawled by like hours as they watched Michael's chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. Rocket had followed them, refusing to leave Michael's side. The dog lay his head gently on the bench, his eyes fixed on the boy's face. "I'm sorry," Michael whispered through the mask once his color started to improve. "I got too excited." Mila stroked his hair, fighting back tears. "Don't apologize, baby. Never apologize for feeling happy." When Michael had stabilized enough to rest comfortably, Eli touched Mila's shoulder. "There's something you need to see," he said quietly. "Will you come to my office? He'll be okay for a few minutes. Rocket will watch over him." Indeed, the dog hadn't moved an inch, maintaining his protective vigil. Mila hesitated, then nodded. She followed Eli down the hallway to a small, cluttered office filled with medical files and dog treats. Eli closed the door and pulled out a laptop. "What I'm about to show you, I could lose my job for this. But after seeing Michael with Rocket, I can't stay silent anymore." He pulled up a video file. "This is from the security camera at Patterson Park 3 months ago, the incident that got Rocket labeled as dangerous. The grainy footage showed a playground. A man who was clearly intoxicated was arguing with a woman who held a toddler. As the argument escalated, the man grabbed for the child. That's when Rocket appeared, not attacking, but positioning himself between the man and the toddler. When the man kicked at the child, Rocket intercepted the blow, taking it himself before barking to alert nearby park-goers. The woman gave a statement defending Rocket, Eli explained, his voice tight with controlled anger. She said he saved her baby, but her statement disappeared. The police report was altered to portray Rocket as the aggressor. And do you know why? Mila shook her head, her hands clenched into fists. Because the man in the video is Councilman Ward Latham's nephew, the one who sponsored the dangerous dog ordinance that gives the shelter the power to euthanize dogs without appeal. They buried the truth to protect him from assault charges and to shield the city from liability. Mila felt sick. They're going to kill an innocent dog to cover up a crime? Welcome to local politics, Eli said grimly. Latham's built his career on being tough on dangerous animals. He can't afford for people to learn that his own nephew is the real danger. We have to show this to someone, Mila insisted. The media, the police. Latham has connections everywhere. That's why I've been careful. But he glanced toward the break room where Michael rested. Seeing your son with Rocket, maybe it's time to stop being careful. What do you mean? Latham's ordinance has already condemned dozens of dogs based on flimsy evidence. Rocket's case could expose the whole corrupt system. But going up against Latham... Eli ran a hand through his hair. He'll fight back hard. Are you prepared for that? Mila thought of Michael's face when he first saw Rocket on TV, the way he'd recognized something in the dog's eyes. She thought of how Rocket had stayed by her son's side during his collapse, offering comfort without being asked. She thought of the truth hidden in that video, a hero condemned for protecting the innocent. My son is fighting for his life, she said quietly. He's chosen to spend his precious time trying to save this dog. If he can be that brave, how can I be any less? Eli nodded slowly. I'll help however I can. But be careful. Latham didn't get where he is by playing fair. When they returned to the break room, Michael was sleeping peacefully, his breathing finally steady. Rocket remained at his post, watching over him. The dog's eyes met Mila's, and she saw what her son had seen. Not aggression, but steadfast loyalty and gentle protection. I'll get you both home, Eli offered softly. We can make a plan tomorrow. As they carefully transferred Michael back to his wheelchair, Rocket pressed his nose against the boy's hand one last time. The dog's eyes seemed to hold a promise, one that Mila silently echoed. Whatever it took, whatever battles lay ahead, they would fight to protect what mattered. When they finally left the shelter, the weight of the truth Eli had shared pressed heavily on Mila's shoulders. But mixed with that burden was something else. Determination. Latham and his corrupt system had picked the wrong dog and the wrong family to try to silence. The evening air carried a chill as Mila paced on her small front porch, gathering her courage. The truth about Rocket weighed heavily on her mind, pushing her toward a decision she couldn't face alone. Her eyes drifted to the house next door, where warm light spilled from the windows. Frank Mallory had lived there since Mila first moved to the neighborhood 5 years ago. Though they rarely spoke beyond polite hellos, she'd noticed how he kept a protective eye on the street, especially when Michael was outside. Taking a deep breath, Mila walked down her steps and across the patchy lawn that separated their homes. Her knuckles had barely touched the door when it opened, revealing Frank's weathered face. "Mrs. Hale," he said, surprise evident in his gruff voice. "Everything okay?" "I need your help, Mr. Mallory, and please call me Mila." She hugged herself against the evening chill. "May I come in?" Frank studied her for a moment, then stepped aside. His living room was neat but sparse, with worn furniture and framed police commendations on the walls. A half-empty coffee cup sat beside a dog-eared paperback. "I know you used to be a police officer," Mila began, perching on the edge of an armchair. "And I know you left the force because you wouldn't stay quiet about something wrong." Frank's expression tightened. "Been asking around about me?" "No, but in a neighborhood this small, people talk." She met his eyes. "They say you're the kind of cop who couldn't be bought." "That's one way to put it." He lowered himself into his recliner with a slight wince. "What's this about?" Mila told him everything, about Michael's wish, about Rocket, and about the damning video Eli had shown her. Frank listened without interruption, his face growing increasingly grim. "Ward Latham," he finally said, shaking his head. "Should have known he'd be mixed up in this. That man's been corrupting this city for years." "The shelter has the original footage somewhere," Mila explained. "But Eli says it's probably buried deep in their system. If we could get it—" "You're talking about illegally accessing government computers," Frank pointed out. "That's serious business." "I know, but they're going to kill an innocent dog to protect a violent man." Mila's voice cracked. "My son, he doesn't have much time left, but he believes in saving Rocket. How can I teach him to stand up for what's right if I won't do it myself?" Frank was quiet for a long moment, absently rubbing his knee, an old injury that had ended his beat days. "I might know someone," he finally said. "A tech specialist who helped me document evidence before I left the force. But Mila, you need to understand what you're getting into. Latham won't just roll over." "I understand," she said firmly. "No, I don't think you do." Frank leaned forward. "Men like Latham, they don't see people. They see obstacles to remove. If you threaten his position, he'll come at you with everything he's got." As if to punctuate his warning, Mila's phone buzzed with a text from her friend at the shelter. "Darlene's calling an emergency meeting. Latham was just here looking furious. Something about questions being asked." Frank stood up. "It's already starting. Give me an hour to make some calls." Across town, in the sterile confines of her office, Darlene Kincaid watched Ward Latham pace like a caged animal. His usually impeccable suit was slightly rumpled, his polished facade showing cracks. "This cannot get out," he snapped. "Do you understand what's at stake? If people learn that video was altered—" "I've already moved all sensitive files to secure storage," Darlene assured him, "and I'm expediting the euthanasia order. By this time tomorrow—" "No." Latham stopped pacing. "Tonight. That dog dies tonight. I want all evidence destroyed before anyone else starts asking questions." Darlene hesitated. "Sir, we have procedures." "Procedures?" He laughed harshly. "The procedures exist to protect us, Darlene, and right now we need protection. Get it done." After he left, Darlene sat at her computer, hands trembling slightly as she began preparing the emergency documentation. She'd built her career on following orders, on keeping the machine running smoothly. But as she typed, she couldn't shake the image of that boy in his wheelchair, looking at Rocket with such hope. Meanwhile, Frank's contact turned, out to be a young woman with bright purple hair and multiple laptops, who insisted they call her Mouse. She met them in a 24-hour diner, claiming the background noise would mask their conversation from surveillance. "The shelter's system is pretty basic," Mouse explained, fingers flying over her keyboard. "But they've recently moved a bunch of files to an encrypted drive. That's where we'll find what we need." "How long will it take?" Mila asked, anxiously watching the door. "Already in." Mouse grinned. Their password was password 222-2034. Government efficiency at its finest. Her smile faded as she dug deeper. "Oh, wow. They've been burying evidence for years. Dozens of dogs condemned without proper evaluation. Falsified reports. Latham's ordinance is a gold mine for them. They get paid per euthanasia." Frank's face darkened. "Can you download it all?" "Better." Mouse pulled out a small drive. I'm creating multiple copies and uploading everything to secure cloud storage. Even if they delete the originals, this evidence isn't going anywhere. Mila watched as file after file transferred, including the original, unedited security footage from the park. Her hands shook as she held the drive containing proof of Rocket's innocence. What they've done, she whispered. How many dogs they've killed to protect themselves. People like Latham, they count on decent folks staying quiet, Frank said softly. They count on fear keeping everyone in line. But sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up. Mouse suddenly straightened. They're accessing the system now. Someone at the shelter is preparing emergency euthanasia documents for tonight. Tonight? Mila stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly. They can't. They can, Frank said grimly. And they will, unless we move fast. Mouse, send copies of everything to my old contacts at the State Oversight Board and the newspaper. Mila, call your friend at the shelter. We need to know exactly when they're planning to do this. As Mila fumbled for her phone, she felt the weight of the evidence drive in her pocket. They had the truth now. Proof of corruption, of cruelty hidden behind policy and procedure. But would it be enough? And would they be able to save Rocket before Latham's desperate gambit succeeded? The next few hours would answer those questions. For now, Mila could only hope that the truth they'd uncovered would be enough to stop the machinery of corruption before it claimed one more innocent life. The fluorescent lights of the diner buzzed overhead as Mila stared at her laptop screen, hands trembling as she prepared the email that would expose everything. The evidence was overwhelming. The doctored footage, the falsified reports, years of corruption that had sent innocent dogs to their deaths. She attached the files Mouse had recovered, double-checking each one. Her phone buzzed. It was Eli. Mila, they're moving fast. His voice was tight with urgency. Latham just left the shelter. He signed an emergency euthanasia order for Rocket. They're planning to do it tonight. The words hit her like a physical blow. Tonight. They can't. We have proof he's innocent. Latham knows that. That's why he's rushing it through. Once it's done, the evidence won't matter anymore. Eli's voice dropped lower. I'm trying to stall, but Darlene's already called in the execution team. Mila's fingers flew across the keyboard, desperately trying to finish the email. I just need a little more time, if we can get this out first. There isn't time, Eli cut in. They're scheduled to arrive at 8 o'clock. That's less than 2 hours from now. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors when Mila arrived. Eli was already there, speaking softly with Michael. She hadn't meant for her son to find out this way, but as she approached, she could see from his face that he already knew. Mom. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. They're going to kill him, aren't they? Mila sat on the edge of his bed, taking his thin hand in hers. We tried, baby. We tried so hard. But he's innocent, Michael's voice cracked. You found the proof. How can they still do this? Sometimes, Eli said gently. Bad people do bad things because they're scared of the truth coming out. They think if they act fast enough, they can hide what they've done. Michael's eyes, too old for his young face, moved between them. Can I at least say goodbye? Mila started to shake her head, but Eli stepped forward. Actually, I might be able to help with that. An hour later, Eli returned to the hospital, having signed out for his dinner break. He carried a large duffel bag that shifted slightly as he walked. The night nurse, who had known Michael since his first admission, simply nodded as Eli passed. Sometimes, rules needed to bend for kindness. In Michael's room, Rocket emerged from the bag cautiously. The dog's tail began to wag as he recognized Michael, and he moved forward to gently lay his head on the bed. Michael's thin fingers buried themselves in Rocket's fur. I'm sorry, the boy whispered. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Mila stood by the window, wiping tears as she watched her son comfort the condemned dog. Eli touched her shoulder gently. "We should go," he murmured. "I need to have him back before they notice he's gone." Neither adult noticed the determined look that crossed Michael's face as they discussed logistics in hushed voices. They didn't see him slip his emergency phone into his pocket or carefully disconnect his monitoring leads one by one. Michael had spent most of his life in hospitals. He knew every shift change, every routine. He knew that the night nurse would be doing medication rounds on the other wing for the next 20 minutes. He knew that the emergency stairwell door didn't latch properly on the 3rd floor. Most importantly, he knew he couldn't let Rocket die. While Mila and Eli continued their whispered conversation, Michael slowly pushed himself up. His legs were weak, but determination gave him strength. Rocket watched him intently, sensing something was happening. "Come," Michael whispered, so softly even the dog barely heard. Rocket stood, pressing against him supportively as Michael slid from the bed. The hallway was empty. Moving slowly, using Rocket for balance, Michael made his way towards the stairwell. Each step was a battle against exhaustion, but he kept going. Rocket matched his pace perfectly, as if understanding the need for stealth. Behind them, Mila's voice drifted from the room. "It's time. We need to get Rocket back." Michael reached the stairwell door just as his mother's voice rose in alarm. "Michael! Michael, where are you?" His legs were shaking badly now, but Rocket pressed closer, helping him stay upright. Together they slipped through the door and began their descent. The hospital corridor erupted in controlled chaos as Mila discovered her son missing. Eli immediately went to check the bathrooms while nurses began a systematic search of nearby rooms. "His monitors are disconnected," one nurse reported, "but there's no code alarm. He did it deliberately." Mila's heart pounded. "He's trying to save Rocket. He wouldn't just give up and let them—" Her voice broke as realization hit. "Oh God, he's running away with him." Eli appeared beside her, face grim. "Security cameras show them entering the stairwell. They're already 3 floors down." "He can barely walk." Mila's voice was thick with fear. "He'll collapse if we don't find him quickly." Meanwhile, in the stairwell, Michael's determination was warring with his failing body. His breath came in short gasps, his skin clammy with sweat. But each time his legs threatened to give out, Rocket was there, bracing him, refusing to let him fall. "Just a little further," Michael wheezed. "We can't let them hurt you, we can't." Above them, doors banged open as the search began in earnest. Voices echoed in the stairwell, calling his name. Michael tried to move faster, but his vision was starting to blur. The last thing he felt was Rocket's warm fur as his legs finally gave out. Then darkness claimed him, and he knew no more. Hours that felt like years passed in the hospital waiting room as doctors worked to stabilize Michael. His already weakened body had been pushed far beyond its limits. Mila sat with her head in her hands, Eli's steady presence beside her the only thing keeping her from completely falling apart. "He just wanted to save him," she whispered. "That's all he wanted. One small mercy in a world that's shown him so little." Eli squeezed her hand. Rocket wouldn't leave his side, you know. Even when they brought the gurney, he kept trying to follow, like he knew Michael needed him. And now they're both going to die. Mila's voice cracked. "Rocket's probably already—" "No," Eli said quietly. I couldn't take him back. Not after seeing them together. He's safe, hidden in my clinic." Mila looked up sharply. "But your job—" "Some things matter more than jobs," Eli replied simply. "Some things are worth fighting for." Before Mila could respond, the doctor appeared in the doorway. His face was grave as he gestured for them to follow him to a private consultation room. The night that had started with an attempt to save one life now balanced precariously between saving two. As Mila rose to follow the doctor, she silently prayed that somehow there would be a way to preserve both the fragile human life that meant everything to her and the loyal canine soul that had risked everything to protect it. The hospital corridor stretched empty and dim in the late evening hours, broken only by the soft glow of night lights and the occasional beeping of medical equipment. Michael's fingers trembled as he pulled the oxygen tubing from his nose, carefully coiling it on the rumpled sheets. His heart pounded, but not from exertion, from purpose. Rocket pressed close against his leg, the dog's warmth steady and reassuring. With shaking hands, Michael pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pajama pocket and smoothed it against the bedside table. The pencil scratched softly as he wrote, "Mom, don't worry, I had to save Rocket. They were going to kill him tonight. It's not fair. He's good and brave, and they won't even give him a chance. I know you'll be scared, but I'll be careful. I love you. Michael." He placed the note on his pillow, then looked down at Rocket's concerned face. "Ready, boy?" he whispered. Rocket's tail gave a small wag of acknowledgement. Together they made their way through the darkened hallway. Michael's bare feet barely made a sound on the cold linoleum floor. His legs felt like rubber, but determination drove him forward. He knew the night nurse's schedule by heart after so many hospital stays. She would be doing medication rounds on the other wing for the next 20 minutes. The emergency stairwell door didn't latch properly. He'd noticed that months ago during one of his allowed exercise walks. Now that flaw became their escape route. Michael pushed it open slowly, wincing at the slight squeak of hinges. The stairs seemed to stretch endlessly below them. Michael gripped the railing tightly, his other hand buried in Rocket's fur for balance. "We can do this," he whispered, more to himself than the dog. "We have to." They had made it down 2 flights when Michael's absence was discovered. Above them, voices raised in alarm. The overhead PA system crackled to life. "Code Pink, 3rd floor. Code Pink, 3rd floor." Michael's heart jumped. He knew what that meant. Missing child. They would lock down the hospital. He tried to move faster, but his legs were already trembling badly. The chaos spread quickly through the hospital's ordered nighttime routine. Security guards moved to cover all exits, while nurses conducted a rapid, room-by-room search. The night supervisor, called hospital administration, then the police. Mila was just pulling into the hospital parking lot for her evening visit when her phone rang. The caller ID showed the hospital's number. "Mrs. Hale, this is Nurse Martinez. There's been an incident. Michael is missing from his room." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Missing? What do you mean missing?" "Security is searching the building now. We've initiated lockdown procedures. Can you come to the 3rd floor nurses' station right away?" Mila was already running toward the entrance, her purse forgotten in the car. The lobby was filled with security personnel and worried-looking staff. A police officer stopped her at the elevator. "Ma'am, I need to see some ID before I can let you up." Mila patted her pockets frantically before remembering her purse. "I'm Michael Hale's mother. They just called me. My ID is in my car." "Joyce," she called out in relief as she spotted a familiar nurse. "Tell them who I am, please." The nurse hurried over to verify Mila's identity, and soon she was being escorted to a small conference room where 2 police detectives waited. Their expressions were carefully neutral as they introduced themselves. "Mrs. Hale, we need to ask you some questions about your son's disappearance," the female detective began. "Did you have any indication he was planning to leave?" "What? No, of course not." Mila's hands twisted together in her lap. "He's seriously ill. He needs supplemental oxygen, regular medication. He can barely walk on his own." "We understand he left with a dog?" the male detective cut in. "How did an animal get into a hospital room?" Mila's stomach clenched. She couldn't implicate Eli, but she had to help them understand. "The dog, Rocket, he's scheduled to be euthanized tonight. Michael's been trying to save him. It was his Make-A-Wish request." The detectives exchanged glances. "So you were aware of your son's attachment to this animal. Did you perhaps help arrange—" "No," Mila burst out. "I would never endanger my son like that. He's all I have. Please, you have to find him before—" Her voice broke. Outside the conference room, the hospital hummed with controlled urgency. Security footage showed Michael and Rocket leaving through a service entrance, but the cameras lost them in the parking lot. Local police coordinated with state authorities to issue an Amber Alert. Mila's phone buzzed with the notification. "Amber Alert. Michael Hale, age 11. Last seen leaving Central Memorial Hospital with large tan and white dog. Child has serious medical condition requiring immediate care. Maybe on foot in downtown area." She stared at the screen through tears, remembering Michael's fierce insistence that Rocket deserved a chance. She should have seen this coming. Should have known her gentle, determined son would try to save the dog himself when the adults in his life couldn't. Search teams began assembling in the hospital parking lot. K-9 units arrived to try tracking Michael's scent. Mila paced the conference room, alternating between crushing guilt and paralyzing fear. "Mrs. Hale?" A young officer appeared in the doorway. "The search coordinator would like to speak with you about locations your son might go." Mila nodded numbly and followed him out. The night stretched ahead, dark and uncertain, while somewhere in the city, her fragile son wandered with only a condemned dog for protection. She had to find him. Had to bring him back before his weakened body gave out. "Please," she whispered to whatever power might be listening, "keep him safe until I can reach him." The search coordinator spread a map across a table, weighted down with coffee cups. "Mrs. Hale, we need you to think carefully. Are there any places Michael feels safe? Parks? Libraries? Anywhere he might try to hide?" Mila stared at the familiar street grid, trying to think through her panic. Where would an 11-year-old boy go with a dog he was trying to protect? Where would he feel secure enough to rest? As she traced possible routes with a shaking finger, police radios crackled with updates from search teams. The night air filled with the sound of sirens and the steady thrum of a police helicopter overhead. Somewhere in the darkness, two souls who had found each other against all odds were running for their lives, while those who loved them could only pray they would be found in time. The glow of streetlights faded behind them as Michael and Rocket made their way toward the edge of town. The boy's breath came in shallow gasps, each step a little slower than the last. His hospital gown fluttered in the cool night breeze, the thin cotton offering little protection against the chill. But Michael pressed on, one hand gripping Rocket's fur while the other clutched the small oxygen tank he'd managed to bring along. Just a little further, boy," he wheezed. "I know where we can go." Rocket stayed close to Michael's side, matching his unsteady pace. The dog's ears twitched at every sound, passing cars, distant sirens, the rustle of leaves. His protective instincts were on high alert, sensing how fragile his young companion had become. In Michael's mind, fuzzy memories surfaced of summer days spent at the old Riverside Pier. Before the hospitals, before the endless treatments. The abandoned amusement park had been closed for years, its rides silent and still. But he remembered hiding spots under the boardwalk where no one would think to look. "We can hide there until Mom understands," he told Rocket between labored breaths. "She'll see. You're good." They followed the railroad tracks that would lead them to the river, staying in the shadows of industrial buildings and overgrown lots. The distant whir of helicopter blades made them both freeze occasionally, pressing close to walls or ducking under trees until the sound passed. As they approached the highway that separated them from the river, Michael's steps became more uneven. The oxygen tank felt heavier with each passing minute. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air, and dark spots danced at the edges of his vision. "Almost there," he whispered, more to himself than to Rocket. They reached the highway crossing, where streetlights cast pools of harsh yellow light across the empty lanes. Michael peered both ways, seeing no cars. His head swam as he started across. Rocket pressed against his leg. The truck seemed to materialize out of nowhere, headlights suddenly blazing, engine roaring as it barreled down the highway. Michael froze in the middle of the road, his exhausted mind unable to process the danger fast enough. But Rocket acted instantly. The dog lunged forward, teeth catching the loose fabric of Michael's hospital gown. With desperate strength, Rocket yanked the boy backward just as the truck thundered past, horn blaring. The force sent them both tumbling onto the shoulder of the road. Michael's oxygen tank clattered across the pavement. Rocket yelped in pain as he hit the ground awkwardly, his back leg twisting beneath him. The truck's taillights disappeared into the distance, the driver likely never knowing how close they'd come to tragedy. "Rocket?" Michael crawled to where the dog lay whimpering. "Are you hurt? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Rocket struggled to his feet, favoring his injured leg but still pressing close to check on Michael. The dog's eyes were filled with concern as he nuzzled the boy's pale face. Meanwhile, across town, a very different scene was unfolding in Councilman Ward Latham's office. He stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, as he spoke to Darlene Kincaid. "This is perfect," he said, watching the city lights below. "We couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to prove our point about dangerous dogs." "I've already spoken to 2 news stations," Darlene replied. "They're running with the angle that an aggressive animal has essentially kidnapped a sick child. The morning shows will eat it up." "Good. Make sure to emphasize the dog's history of violence. The public needs to understand the threat." Ward's lips curved in a cold smile. "By morning, no one will question why that animal needs to be put down." "What about when they find the boy?" Darlene asked. "He seems quite attached to the dog." "By then it won't matter. Once the media paints this dog as a menace, public opinion will do our work for us. No one will risk opposing the dangerous dog ordinance after this." Back on the highway, Michael's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The exertion and shock of their near miss had drained what little strength he had left. His breathing became more labored, the portable oxygen tank providing less and less relief. "Have to keep going," he gasped, pushing himself up on trembling arms. "The pier, not far now." Rocket limped beside him, trying to provide support despite his own injury. The dog's protective instincts had only grown stronger after the close call. Every few steps, he would look up at Michael's face, whining softly at the boy's obvious distress. They made their way down the embankment toward the river, moving slowly through tall grass and scattered debris. The old amusement pier rose before them, a skeleton of weathered wood and rusted metal silhouetted against the night sky. To Michael's fading vision, it wavered like a mirage. "Almost there." His words slurred slightly as he stumbled forward. The world seemed to tilt and spin around him. "Just need to rest." Rocket pressed closer, trying to steady the boy as his steps became more erratic. The dog's own injury made him limp heavily, but he remained focused solely on protecting his young friend. Michael's hand clutched weakly at Rocket's fur as his consciousness began to fade. The pier seemed both impossibly close and endlessly far away. In his oxygen-deprived mind, the memory of happier days there blurred with the harsh reality of their desperate flight. "One real adventure," he whispered, the words barely audible. "That's all I wanted." His legs gave out, and he slumped against Rocket's side. The dog braced himself despite his injured leg, whining urgently as he tried to keep Michael from falling completely. Above them, helicopter searchlights swept back and forth across the darkened riverfront, still unaware of the drama unfolding in the shadows below the pier. The morning sun cast harsh fluorescent light across the Channel 5 news studio. Darlene Kincaid sat primly in the guest chair, her face a mask of practiced concern as cameras rolled. The red, on-air light glowed steadily above them. "As shelter director, I'm deeply worried about this situation," she said, her voice carrying just the right note of authority. "We have a critically ill child who's been essentially kidnapped by a dangerous animal with a documented history of aggression." The host, Angela Martinez, leaned forward with a concerned expression. "And you believe the mother, Mila Hale, may have played a role in this?" "It's unfortunate, but we've seen signs of unstable behavior," Darlene replied smoothly. "Ms. Hale has been influenced by radical animal rights activists who care more about their agenda than this child's safety. They've manipulated a grieving mother's emotions." In the green room, Mila watched the interview on a wall-mounted monitor, her hands clenched into fists. Frank Mallory stood beside her, his weathered face grim. "Ready?" he asked quietly, patting the flash drive in his pocket. Mila nodded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "They're not going to get away with these lies. Not anymore." Minutes later, she sat in the same chair Darlene had occupied. The studio lights felt hot on her face, but her voice remained clear and strong. "My son Michael is dying," she began, looking directly into the camera. "He had one wish, to save an innocent dog from being killed for something he didn't do. I'm here to show you the truth about Rocket." She nodded to the control room. The footage Frank had recovered began playing on the studio's backdrop screens. The grainy security video showed a small neighborhood playground. A toddler played while her father staggered nearby, clearly intoxicated. When the man lurched toward the child with raised fists, Rocket appeared, not attacking, but placing himself between father and daughter. The dog's body language was protective, not aggressive. "Rocket saved that little girl," Mila explained as the footage played. "But the city buried this evidence because they were afraid of a lawsuit from the girl's father. They labeled an innocent dog as dangerous and sentenced him to death to protect themselves." Angela Martinez looked stunned. "These are serious allegations, Ms. Hale. Are you saying city officials deliberately falsified records?" "Yes, and I have more proof." Mila held up a stack of documents. "These are internal emails showing how Councilman Ward Latham and Shelter Director Kincaid conspired to hide the truth. They knew Rocket was innocent, but they were willing to kill him anyway." The studio phones began lighting up as viewers called in. Social media exploded with reactions as people shared the footage online. Save Rocket and Faucher Justice for Rocket started trending within minutes. In his office, Ward Latham watched the broadcast with growing fury. He snatched up his phone and jabbed at the keypad. "Damage control. Now!" he snapped at his PR team. "Get me on every network that will take me, and get the police chief on the line. I want that dog treated as a threat. If they find it, shoot on sight." But public opinion was already turning. As the morning progressed, more stations picked up the story. People began sharing their own experiences with the city's aggressive dog ordinance. Photos of Rocket and Michael from their shelter visits emerged, showing the gentle bond between them. Darlene tried to counter with another press appearance, but her usual polish had cracked. "The footage is taken out of context," she insisted. "That dog has other incidents on record." "Records you falsified," Mila interrupted, having been invited back for a follow-up segment. How many other innocent animals have died because of your lies? The question hung in the air as Darlene struggled to respond. Viewers watched her composure crumble in real time. Meanwhile, at police headquarters, the chief studied the mounting public pressure with concern. Ward's order to treat Rocket as a threat had been clear, but executing a dog that much of the city now viewed as a hero would be a PR nightmare. Still, orders were orders. He dispatched additional search teams with instructions to approach with caution. News helicopters tracked their movements, adding to the tension as the morning wore on. Mila's phone buzzed constantly with messages of support and tips about possible sightings. She coordinated with Frank to follow up on the most promising leads, all while continuing to share their evidence with the media. "The truth is finally coming out," Frank said as they rushed between interviews. "But Ward and Darlene are desperate now. That makes them dangerous." "I don't care what they do to me," Mila replied. "I just need to find my son before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Frank squeezed her shoulder. "We'll find them. And thanks to you, everyone knows what Rocket really is. A hero, not a monster." As the morning stretched into afternoon, the story continued to evolve. Animal rights groups organized protests outside City Hall. The little girl Rocket had protected was identified, and her mother came forward to corroborate the true story. Ward tried to maintain control, holding a hasty press conference on the City Hall steps. "This is a manufactured controversy," he declared. "We have clear protocols regarding dangerous animals." He was drowned out by protesters' chants of "Save Rocket" and "Tell the truth." The sight of the usually polished councilman shouting over demonstrators only added to the shifting narrative. But despite the public support growing for Rocket, Ward refused to back down. He issued an emergency order reinforcing the shoot-on-sight directive, his signature sharp and angry on the official document. "I won't let some bleeding hearts and a manipulated video undermine public safety," he told Darlene during a tense phone call. "That dog dies one way or another. Make sure our people understand that." Darlene's usual confidence had evaporated. "The optics are terrible, Ward. Maybe if we offered to review the case—" "No reviews, no committees, no compromise," he snapped. "Everything we've built depends on the dangerous dog ordinance. If people start questioning it now—" He left the threat unspoken. Back in the Channel 5 studio, Mila finished another interview. Her voice was hoarse from talking, but she refused to stop. Every minute on camera was another chance someone might spot Michael and Rocket. "Please," she said, looking into the lens one more time. "If anyone sees them, remember, Rocket isn't dangerous. He's protecting my son, just like he protected that little girl. Don't let fear make you see a monster where there's only love and loyalty." The words resonated across the city as the search continued under the hot afternoon sun. The truth was out, but time was running out for both boy and dog. Ward Latham paced his office, his polished shoes wearing tracks in the expensive carpet. The constant ping of notifications from his phone had become maddening, each one bringing news of another supporter jumping ship, another damaging headline, another crack in his carefully constructed public image. "Sir," his assistant called from the doorway, "the police union president is backing away from the dangerous dog ordinance. He's planning a press conference at 3 o'clock. Ward slammed his hand on his desk. "Get him on the phone, now!" But before the call could be placed, his phone lit up with a different alert. This one from the emergency tip line. His eyes narrowed as he read the message. A security guard at the old Riverside Pier had reported seeing a small boy and a large dog with an injured leg making their way along the waterfront. Outside his window, dark clouds were gathering over the city. The Weather Service had been warning about an approaching storm system all morning. Thunder rumbled in the distance, as if nature itself was adding drama to the unfolding crisis. Across town, Mila's phone buzzed with the same tip. She and Eli were already in his truck, having spent the morning chasing down possible sightings. The pier made perfect sense. Michael had always loved it there, back when he was strong enough for family outings. "He remembers the carnival we took him to last summer?" Mila said, her voice tight with worry. "Before his condition got worse, he said it was his last perfect day." Eli pressed down harder on the accelerator, weaving through traffic as fat raindrops began to splatter against the windshield. "We'll get there first," he promised, "before the police, before Ward's people." But they weren't the only ones racing toward the pier. News vans pulled out of station parking lots, their satellite dishes swaying. Police cruisers activated their sirens, cutting through the thickening rain. The tip had gone wide, and now it was a race against time and weather. Mila clutched her phone, watching the storm radar with growing dread. The system was intensifying, with strong winds and lightning approaching the riverside. Her boy was out there, already struggling to breathe, with only a loyal dog for protection. "Faster," she whispered, though Eli was already pushing the speed limit. "Please, faster." At police headquarters, the chief faced mounting pressure from both sides. Ward's shoot-on-sight order remained in effect, but public sentiment had shifted dramatically after the release of the security footage. Officers were calling in, asking for clarification on how to proceed. "Maintain distance," he finally ordered over the radio. "Monitor but do not engage unless human life is directly threatened. I repeat, do not engage." Ward's voice cut through on another channel. "That order is superseded. The dog is to be considered dangerous until proven otherwise." "Begging your pardon, councilman," the chief replied firmly, "but my officers will not shoot a dog in front of a sick child while news cameras roll. That's not happening." The response was met with static, then silence. The old pier loomed ahead as Eli's truck approached the riverside. Once a bustling carnival spot, it had fallen into disrepair over the years. The Ferris wheel stood silent against the darkening sky, its empty seats creaking in the rising wind. Mila spotted movement near the ticket booth, a flash of fur, a small figure in a hospital gown. "There!" she cried, pointing through the rain-streaked windshield. But they weren't. Alone. Police cruisers were pulling into the parking lot, and news vans were close behind. The storm was picking up force, whipping the river into white-capped waves that crashed against the pier's supports. "Around back," Eli said, turning down a service road. "We can cut them off before—" A crack of thunder drowned out his words. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the entire pier in harsh white light. In that brief flash, they saw them clearly. Michael and Rocket, huddled together near the end of the pier. Mila's heart stopped. Her son looked so small, so fragile against the massive structure and churning water. Rocket stood pressed against him, using his body to shield the boy from the wind. Even from this distance, she could see the dog's injured leg, the way he favored it while maintaining his protective stance. "The pier's not safe in this weather," Eli said, fighting to keep control of the truck as another gust buffeted them. "The whole structure's too exposed." Police officers were emerging from their vehicles, some with weapons drawn despite the chief's orders. News crews struggled with equipment in the wind, determined to capture whatever happened next. And through it all, the storm intensified, as if nature itself was raising the stakes of this final confrontation. Mila threw open her door the moment Eli stopped the truck. Rain soaked her instantly, plastering her hair to her face. She could barely hear the shouts of "Stop!" and "Ma'am, stay back!" over the wind and thunder. Nothing would stop her from reaching her son. Not the storm, not the police, not Ward Latham and his political machine. She began running towards the pier, Eli close behind her, as lightning again illuminated the scene in stark detail. Michael turned at the sound of her approach. His face was pale, His breathing labored, but his eyes lit up with recognition. Rocket raised his head, ears forward, tail giving a cautious wag despite his obvious pain. They were so close, just a few hundred feet away, but the storm was reaching its peak, and time was running out for both boy and dog. Behind them, voices argued over megaphones and radios. "Stand down! Maintain position! The structure's not stable! Get that dog! Protect the child!" But Mila heard none of it. Her entire world had narrowed to those few hundred feet, to her son's face, to the faithful dog protecting him. Lightning flashed again, thunder crashed overhead, and the race to reach them became all that mattered. The storm's fury intensified as Mila raced down the aging pier, her feet pounding against wooden planks that creaked ominously with each step. Salt spray mixed with rain stung her eyes, but she couldn't look away from the scene unfolding ahead. Her son, pale as a ghost, slumped against Rocket's rain-soaked fur. "Michael!" she screamed over the howling wind. "Baby, don't move!" The pier swayed beneath them as another massive wave crashed against its supports. Decades of neglect had weakened the structure, and now each thunderous impact sent tremors through the weathered wood. Splinters of decking broke free, carried away by the violent gusts. Rocket stood firm despite his injured leg, pressing his body closer to Michael as the boy's strength failed. The dog's eyes darted between approaching officers and the threatening waters below, his protective instincts visibly warring with his fear. "Subject located?" An officer's voice crackled over multiple radios. "Child appears unresponsive. Dog showing aggressive posture." "No." Mila tried to push past a police line that had formed, but strong hands held her back. "He's protecting him. Please, you don't understand?" Through the sheets of rain, she could see multiple officers advancing with weapons drawn. Their flashlight beams cut through the growing darkness, centering on Rocket's rain-matted form. The dog's ears flattened, but he didn't move from Michael's side. "Ma'am, stay back," ordered a sergeant, his voice tight with tension. "That dog's been deemed dangerous. We can't risk—" "Risk what?" she screamed, struggling against the restraining grip. "He saved my son's life. Look at him. He's keeping Michael from falling." Indeed, as another violent wave rocked the pier, Rocket shifted his weight to brace Michael against the movement. The boy's hospital gown whipped in the wind, his oxygen-starved lips taking on a darker blue tint that made Mila's heart clench with terror. "All units, maintain positions," the sergeant barked into his radio. "Williams, get a clear shot if that dog makes any sudden moves toward the boy." Mila watched in horror as Officer Williams took up position, his rifle trained on Rocket's chest. The dog seemed to sense the threat, but still refused to abandon his post beside Michael. A deep groan emanated from beneath the pier, audible even over the storm's rage. The entire structure shuddered, and several boards split with sharp cracks. Water surged through widening gaps in the decking. "The pier's going," someone shouted. "We need to evacuate now." But Michael and Rocket were still 30 feet ahead, trapped between armed officers and the pier's rapidly deteriorating end section. Another support beam gave way with a thunderous snap, and the deck tilted precariously. Mila finally broke free of the restraining hands. "He can't breathe!" she screamed, seeing Michael's chest heaving with desperate attempts to draw air. "Please, he needs his medication. Let me get to him." "Dog's moving," Officer Williams called out, his finger tightening on the trigger. But Rocket had only shifted to better support Michael as the boy started to slip sideways. The dog's injured leg trembled with the effort, yet he remained steady, a living barrier between his young friend and the churning waters below. Lightning split the sky, followed instantly by deafening thunder. In that brilliant flash, Mila saw every detail with terrifying clarity. The muzzle of Williams' rifle, Rocket's fur, standing on end, Michael's closed eyes and slack features. Her son was losing consciousness, the storm and stress overwhelming his fragile system. "Hold your fire," came a new voice, and Eli pushed through the police line. "That dog is the only thing keeping that boy from going into the water. Look at his position. He's supporting, not threatening." The pier groaned again, a deep structural sound that sent chills through everyone present. Wood continued to splinter and crack, the destruction spreading toward where Michael and Rocket were trapped. "Last warning," Officer Williams shouted over the wind. "Step away from the boy." But Rocket couldn't have obeyed even if he understood. Moving away meant letting Michael fall as the pier crumbled beneath them. The dog's eyes met Mila's across the gap, filled with a determination that mirrored her own. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "He's dying. My boy is dying, and that dog is his last wish. Don't take this from him. Don't let it end like this." The storm raged on. Waves crashed against weakened supports, and time seemed to freeze in that moment of impossible choice. A mother's desperation against official orders, a dog's loyalty against human fear, and a child's life hanging literally in the balance. Officer Williams' finger remained on the trigger, his aim unwavering despite the wind and rain. Rocket stood his ground, trembling but resolute, as more of the pier began to give way around them. And Michael, unaware of the drama unfolding, slipped further into unconsciousness, while his mother watched in helpless terror. The next lightning flash illuminated the scene like a stark photograph, a tableau of love, fear, duty, and desperation frozen in one brilliant moment, with the dark waters churning hungrily below, waiting to see which way fate would fall. The ancient wood finally surrendered to the storm's fury. With a deafening crack, the section of pier beneath Michael's feet splintered and gave way. Time seemed to slow as Mila watched her son plummet toward the churning water, his hospital gown billowing like a ghost in the rain. "Michael!" Her scream tore through the night, barely audible above the storm's rage. Without a moment's hesitation, Rocket launched himself off the crumbling edge, his tan and white body arced through the air, injured leg forgotten in his desperate mission to reach the boy. The dog hit the water mere seconds after Michael, disappearing beneath the roiling surface. "Shoot it!" someone shouted, as Rocket's head broke the surface near Michael. "The dog's attacking!" Officer Williams raised his rifle, tracking Rocket's movement through the scope as the dog paddled frantically toward the struggling boy. His finger tightened on the trigger. "No." Frank Mallory's weathered face transformed with sudden fury. The retired cop launched himself forward with surprising speed, his broad shoulders connecting solidly with Williams' midsection. Both men went down hard on the wet boards, the rifle clattering away harmlessly. "That dog's trying to save him, you fool!" Frank shouted, pinning the younger officer down. Below, Michael's head slipped beneath the surface. Rocket dove under, emerging seconds later with a grip on the boy's hospital gown. But the current was too strong, the debris too thick. Each time the dog managed to lift Michael's face above water, another wave would crash over them both. Eli stripped off his jacket, kicked off his shoes. "Hold this!" he shouted, thrusting his phone at Mila before diving into the thundering river. The veterinarian's powerful strokes cut through the water as he fought his way toward where Rocket struggled to keep Michael afloat. Mila pressed her hands against her mouth, watching helplessly as the current swept her son further away. Rocket refused to let go, even when a massive log slammed into his side. The dog's pained yelp carried across the water, but still he held on, keeping Michael's head above the surface. Other officers were now restraining Williams, while Frank shouted instructions to the rescue teams arriving on scene. But Mila could focus only on the desperate scene playing out in the river, Eli swimming with everything he had, Rocket fighting the current with fierce determination, and Michael's limp form being tossed by the waves. "Please," she whispered, the word lost in the storm. "Please don't take him." The churning water carried all three toward a tangle of broken pier supports. Eli reached them just as another massive wave struck. Rocket's grip on Michael never wavered, even as debris rained down around them. The dog's trust was immediate. As soon as Eli got close enough, Rocket adjusted his hold to help the veterinarian secure a better grip on the unconscious boy. Together, dog and man battled the current, working as one to keep Michael's face above water while rescue teams scrambled to get lines and flotation devices to them. Every second felt like an eternity to Mila as she watched them fight for her son's life, each wave threatening to tear him away forever. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scene in stark detail. Rocket's determined face, Eli's grimace of effort, and Michael's pale features, all suspended in that brilliant moment between salvation and tragedy as the storm raged on around them. The current slammed them against a fallen support beam, and Rocket's yelp of pain cut through the storm's roar. The dog was pinned, still desperately holding on to Michael's hospital gown, even as the water threatened to pull the boy away. "He's stuck!" Eli shouted, fighting to keep his grip on Michael while reaching for Rocket. The beam had trapped the dog's already injured leg, but Rocket refused to let go of Michael, even in his own distress. From the shore, Mila's voice carried over the chaos. "The beam! It's loose on the left side!" Eli kicked hard against the current, managing to brace himself against the debris. With one arm securing Michael, he reached down and heaved at the beam. It shifted just enough. Rocket wriggled free, immediately resuming his protective hold on Michael's other side. "Swim diagonal to the current!" Mila screamed, gesturing frantically. "There's a calm spot by the old dock!" News helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights cutting through the rain to illuminate the desperate rescue. Live footage captured Rocket's determined swimming, despite his obvious limp, Michael's pale face occasionally visible above the churning water, and Eli's powerful strokes as he guided them toward safety. The police officers, who had been ready to shoot Rocket moments before, now scrambled down the bankside, forming a human chain into the shallows. The cameras caught it all. The very men who'd nearly ended Rocket's life now reached out to help save him. As they neared the shore, more hands reached for them. Frank coordinated from the bank, directing rescuers to the safest approach. With one final push against the current, they made it into reach of the human chain. "Get him up! Get him up!" Mila rushed forward as they lifted Michael onto solid ground. Paramedics swarmed immediately, but Rocket wouldn't leave the boy's side until Eli gently pulled him back to give them room. Mila collapsed beside her son, her hands shaking as she touched his face. "Michael, baby, please!" The paramedics worked quickly, checking vitals, starting oxygen. Rocket pressed against Mila's side, wet fur and all, his eyes never leaving Michael's face as news cameras captured the tableau of mother, child, and the dog who'd risked everything to save him. Within hours, the dramatic river rescue footage dominated every news channel and social media platform. The video of Rocket's unwavering determination to save Michael, despite his own injuries, touched millions of hearts across the nation. Comments and shares multiplied by the thousands, with people calling Rocket a hero and demanding justice for his mistreatment. The public pressure became overwhelming. Investigative reporters dug deeper, uncovering Ward Latham's hastily signed kill order for Rocket. The document, dated just hours before Michael's escape, revealed the councilman's desperate attempt to silence the truth. Meanwhile, anonymous shelter workers came forward with evidence of Darlene Kincaid's systematic falsification of records. "Multiple instances of tampering have been identified," announced District Attorney Margaret Chen at a press conference. Mrs. Kincaid deliberately altered bite reports and behavioral assessments, not just in Rocket's case, but in dozens of others. Darlene was led out of the shelter in handcuffs, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, her face ashen as cameras flashed. The charges included evidence tampering, misconduct in office, and filing false reports. Ward Latham didn't wait for the inevitable. He submitted his resignation letter to the city council, citing personal reasons. But everyone knew the truth. His political career crumbled as quickly as his dangerous dog ordinance, which the council immediately moved to review and revise. Meanwhile, Michael's story captured hearts nationwide. A crowdfunding page set up by hospital staff exceeded its goal within 24 hours. Donations poured in from all 50 states, ranging from $5 to substantial anonymous gifts from charitable foundations. "We are overwhelmed by everyone's kindness," Mila told reporters, her eyes wet with tears. "This will help us explore treatment options we never thought possible." At the veterinary clinic, Rocket underwent surgery to repair his injured leg. Eli supervised the procedure personally, ensuring the brave dog received the best care possible. As Rocket recovered, he spent his days in a special room the hospital arranged next to Michael's, where both patients could heal together. Their unlikely bond, forged in crisis, grew stronger with each passing day. 6 months after the river rescue, late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows of their modest rental home. The small living room was cozy, with worn but comfortable furniture and walls decorated with colorful get-well cards from strangers who had become friends. Michael sat on the plush second-hand couch, his oxygen tank quietly humming beside him. Though still thin and pale, his cheeks had a hint of color that hadn't been there before. New treatments, funded by the community's generosity, were slowly making a difference. "The dragon wasn't really mean," Michael read aloud from his book, one hand absently stroking Rocket's tan and white fur. "He just needed someone to understand him." Rocket lay pressed against Michael's side, his head resting on the boy's lap. The dog's injured leg had healed, but left him with a permanent limp, a badge of honor from that stormy night at the river. These days, he wore a bright vest identifying him as a certified therapy dog. 3 times a week, he and Michael visited the children's ward at the hospital, bringing comfort to other sick kids who saw themselves in Michael's story. At the kitchen table, Mila and Eli sat surrounded by paperwork, finalizing the details for their new rescue organization, Second Chance Sanctuary, inspired by Rocket's journey. The small nonprofit would focus on rehabilitating misunderstood dogs and matching them with families who needed healing of their own. "Just need your signature here," Eli said softly, sliding a document toward Mila. His warm eyes crinkled at the corners as he watched her sign her name with confidence, so different from the uncertain woman who had first walked into the shelter months ago. Mila paused, looking up at her son and Rocket. The sight still amazed her. 2 souls who had saved each other. She was no longer the same person who had worked double shifts and accepted injustice in silence. Standing up for Rocket had awakened something in her, a fierce determination to fight for what was right, no matter the odds. "Done," she said, signing the last page. "It's really happening." Eli reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You did this, Mila. You and Michael." From the couch, Michael's voice carried on, steady and clear. "And when people saw past the dragon's scary outside, they found out he had the bravest heart in all the land." Rocket's tail thumped against the couch cushions, as if agreeing with the story. His gentle brown eyes stayed fixed on Michael, ever watchful, ever protective. The dog who had once been labeled dangerous now embodied love and loyalty in its purest form. This was their victory, not just surviving, but transforming. One sick boy's wish had changed not only their lives, but would now go on to change countless others. In their small living room, surrounded by afternoon light and possibility, they were more than survivors. They were a family, bound together by courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that every life deserved a second chance. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.